appreciate you. And I think we're going to transition into our next phase of the webinar. Thank you.
Hey all, thanks Lou. For everyone who is just joining, my name is Erin McKinley. I'm with Bay Area News Group, and we will be transitioning, like Lou said, to our main call. So thank you again for everyone who has joined. I just wanted to go over some housekeeping notes with everybody and make sure everyone is familiar with the Q&A and all that good stuff. So we did just close one portion of the conversation and starting here in the next few minutes with our other. If you did not have a chance to submit any questions beforehand, please go ahead and submit questions via the Q&A button that you see on your Zoom toolbar. If you have anything else that you would like to just comment on, please go ahead and use that chat feature. We'd love to hear from you. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started here shortly. But I did want to let you guys know that we do have another event coming up, and it is going to be on July 16th, Thursday, July 16th, right here on Zoom at 10 a.m. We will be discussing summer TV, what has been the hits, what has not hit, what's kind of on the horizon for TV shows. Are they coming back? And also, what is TV going to do in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, and what are we going to see with the reaction to TV and shows? And then in addition, how sports broadcasters are going to manage a world where we don't really have a lot of sports. You know, what are they doing? How can we see them maybe again on our television in a different capacity? So that is going to be our conversation again on Thursday, July 16th. We really do hope that you'll be able to participate in that conversation. If you are looking to register for that or even find other recordings of past events that we've done, please go to mercurynews.com/events or eastbaytimes.com/events. And you can find all your information there. I think we're kind of about ready to get started. So again, one last reminder, if you have a question, please use that Q&A button. If you have anything else in terms of comments, we'd love to hear from you. Use that chat feature. And I'm going to turn it back over to our housing reporter, Louis Hansen.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks subscribers and followers of the East Bay Times and Mercury News. I'm Louis Hansen. I'm a housing reporter with the Bay Area News Group. And today we're talking about the housing market in the Bay Area and what impacts that COVID-19 has had. We are already in a hot market. It started in April 2012 and really never slowed down until maybe 2018. We were setting records. We were seeing 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths sell for what would be mansion prices in the rest of America. So we're seeing a lot of demand and high prices out here. And things were picking up again in January. And then COVID-19 hit. So we're going to look a little bit about some of the impacts that it's having and looking forward. We have some great guests today, and I really want to thank them for coming. The first guest we'll have is Skylar Olson. She is a senior principal economist at Zillow, and she has built a team of economists focused on local markets like our Bay Area. She holds her PhD in economics from the University of Washington, where she has also won honors for her teaching. We're lucky to have her here. She's an expert's expert. So please, Skylar, welcome and great to have you.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I, for whatever reason, can't get my video to turn on. But I have a face. There you go. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, Skylar, you know, you've been looking at the numbers recently, so why don't we jump right in? Can you tell us what's been happening in 2020? What was happening early, and then what impact has COVID had recently?
Absolutely. I would love to share my screen. Hopefully you see something in front of you. Can you see this? I'm not having
Yeah, absolutely.
You can see the graph. Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. Okay, so the graph in front of you here, and actually I'll pop down, the way that we look at the Bay Area is with the two separate metropolitan areas. So I'll start on the San Jose metropolitan area numbers. Actually, you know, I'm going to start on the San Francisco because it does reflect the nation a little bit more. So let me kind of talk about why. So in the beginning of...
And when we, just to be clear, when we talk about San Francisco, it's a San Francisco metro, so that includes Oakland as well, correct?
Oakland, absolutely, and then up into Marin.
Okay.
Whereas the San Jose metropolitan area, you get much more south and East Bay, further southeast. Absolutely. Okay, so pre all of this, okay, before the crisis, the activity level in many ways was better than it had been in 2019, right? So in the that you see in front of you here, for example, we had finally started to see new listings coming on the market in a way that was higher than last year. We had finally started to see that build in San Francisco. That's the guy that you're looking at. That's new listings coming from existing homeowners, right? Putting their home on the market for sale. Everything hit, right? And then we saw a dramatic decrease in the, you know, homeowners putting their housing on the market, but also, of course, buyers, you know, signing on the dotted line. A bid has been accepted. That's your pending sales number. So you can see with the crisis of it all at the end of March is when we hit our lowest point in terms of housing activity. Now, the surprising part has been watching the activity return. And return really, you know, fairly quickly in terms of kind of coming back up to those pre-crisis levels. Now, a lot of that would have been someone who otherwise would have been active at the end of March. That's now pushed their timing, you know, into June, right? And in many ways, I think what we are seeing are buyers and sellers persevering through because of all those home shopping seasons, you know, in 2019 and 18. They're characterized by very low inventory and a lot of competition. I think a lot of buyers and sellers are kind of seeing that if the risk before was escalation clauses and things moving really fast and not being able to find inventory, these days, you know, maybe inventory is still very, you know, not as good as it could be, still very low, but the risk is virtual buying and not being able to touch and see and smell the home quite as readily, still persevering through. So here you can see the fall in activity and the quick recovery. And then down, I'll look at the San Jose metropolitan area. This is this one is a little bit less to the national story, just because you don't see quite as big of a well, actually the fall is very significant. But pending sales are not above where they were in San Jose relative to last year. New for sale listings are still very low relative to last year nationally and in San Jose. San Francisco, it's a little bit kind of closer where you've seen an incredible recovery in pending sales. It is above where it was last year. And then new for sale listings has come back again. But San Jose, a bit slower to recover in terms of activity. That said, prices in both markets pretty darn stable. This kind of lift in the prices in San Francisco, keep in mind, median list prices change with your composition of the homes that are available.
Okay. Yeah, talk about the median list price. And this is a stretch between, you know, February and June. So it's not year over year. We're just talking about the kind of the prime buying season, right?
Yeah, well, these are year over year numbers. So each of these we're comparing to that day last year, you know,
of course, yeah.
Price looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are the year over year numbers, but we have, you know, the timeline is absolutely looking at, you know, starting in February. So in other words, you would say in February, we were more new listings were coming on the market every day than they had at the same time in 2019. So beginning of home shopping season. Look at the median list price. We had, again, same, you know, similar idea where the homes that were being listed on the market starting in the season were of a more expensive set than last year. If we were, you know, want to talk about home values in terms of how was prices changing on individual homes, you know, in many ways, San Francisco and the Bay Area had started to reaccelerate slowly after actually kind of slowing down in terms of that price growth as people pursued affordability in more other metropolitan areas. San Francisco and San Jose home value appreciation had started to slow down in many ways because you were starting to, I mean, it's hard to imagine what that affordability ceiling is, right? In order to access that kind of job growth, those kind of opportunities, that kind of quality of life that these metropolitan areas offer. People are willing to pay a lot of their income to live in these places, but eventually that does get strained and challenged when income doesn't keep up. So we had actually started to see appreciation in these metros get pretty soft. But into this very season, we had started to see it lift back up again, right, with renewed interest. And now we're starting to see that slow down. But that median list price rising really reflects the idea that the homeowners that are more confident about putting their home on the market are higher end homeowners. You know, these are of the, you know, housing that tends to be more expensive. These are homeowners that tend to have more wealth and more income. So they're more insulated from the loss.
Where is that point in the Bay Area, roughly?
Oh, what is that cutoff number for what makes high?
Sure.
Well, the median home price, you know, across the full housing stock in San Jose is 1.2 million. You know, cuts it in half, guys. That's wild. That's wild.
Right. And just for a little context, Skylar, how does that compare with the national average, the national median?
Oh, national median is in the 200,000 range. So that's, I mean, and actually that kind of informs some of the other thinking that we're trying to, you know, we're trying to put our head around and grasp what's driving a lot of the dynamics that we're seeing, you know, in data such as search, for example. Right, people started to be a little bit alarmed about the death of the American city. Surely remote work plus COVID meant that we were fleeing the, you know, these formerly hot job markets and these dense urban spaces in favor of the suburbs or in favor of different metropolitan areas. San Francisco and San Jose are very different from each other in terms of what those patterns look like. In both metros, the suburbs are taking a smaller share of search, but in San Jose, more people are looking outside of San Jose than they did before, right? The share of search in the metro has increased significantly, but San Francisco hasn't. You know, it hasn't. And both are very expensive places, but San Jose absolutely takes the cake.
So what you're seeing, Skylar, is that people in San Francisco are searching less to get out of San Francisco, and people in San Jose metro are more likely to look to move elsewhere.
Absolutely, they're more likely to get outside, and they're now, in order to explain why, now we just have to put on a bit of our creative hat, right? You know, San Francisco and San Jose are prohibitively expensive in terms of home buying, right? It's often very normal that, you know, for a first-time home buyer to actually access housing, you know, that's one of the reasons why you had seen that slower home value growth, right? It's because more people had really needed to leave in order to become a homeowner because the prices in both of these metropolitan areas have just grown so very quickly out of the last crisis. But San Jose is worse, right, in terms of the lack of affordability. And then, you know, when you think about what remote work provides, you know, it does provide the opportunity, you know, to live farther away from your job. It provides an opportunity to live where you want. I don't, you know, I actually grew up in Fremont, California, you know, kind of down near, you know, San Jose.
Well, welcome home.
Absolutely. So I don't mean, so I say this, you know, I lived right by Lake Elizabeth. I loved that area. You know, my family loved living there. But when you think about the imagination that's captured after the question of if I could live anywhere, where would I go? San Francisco is still more romantic feel, right? In terms of, you know, people searching and if I could go anywhere. If I could eat anywhere, I would probably eat, you know, in San Jose. But if I living anywhere, maybe I don't, you know, I'm hesitating here. I hate to say people like one place more than another. We all have different preferences. but just trying to put my head around why would people be sticky to San Francisco, but be leaving San Jose. It's a hard one.
Yeah, I think we have a question from a reader, and she asks if the higher sales rate in San Francisco versus San Jose could be due to the flight away from cities and towards suburbs.
We're actually seeing, I think there's reason to believe that that will be significant, right? By disconnecting the relationship between where you work and where you live, that really does provide, it really lowers the cost of pursuing the affordability strategy that people have often had to pursue, which is live further and further and further out, right? Because it lowers the cost of that commute back in. And if you don't have to do it as often, you're willing to be even further out. When we look at the search activity and see what's trend, where's there a growing share of search, the suburbs are actually taking up a smaller share. And since I'm sharing my screen, I might as well pop down and show you guys. Taking up a smaller share of search.
Yeah, take us through this graph. What is it showing?
Yeah, so here we've got the share of search that's heading to the suburbs. And you can see in that almost every single major metropolitan area, Detroit is the most significant here. We see a share of search going to Detroit. It's not just in favor, though, of urban areas. It's also in favor of rural areas. And one of the things to think about is remote work. One, there's a lot of ways what it brings. For the our preferences don't change that fast, right? So it's not that the urbanophile will become a rural homesteader, though I'm sure some people make that transition.
Sure.
For the most part, right, it could mean you now can live in a different city every year if you're fully remote. But for most, remote work in the future will probably be remote only a couple days a week, not a fully remote job, right? So what that means, 45-minute commute becomes 60 minutes. And within suburb moves might be more where a lot of the changes take place. It's not, do I change, if I love the suburbs before for what it offered and the schools it had, now I want a home with a dual master or ensuite bathrooms if my adult children have come to live with me and it'll be hard for them to launch into a terrible job market, right? Or so the open layout kitchen, I want the home office, right, to make that more sane. So we might be within suburb moves, but then pushing into the rural areas, right, as you're more willing to accept a bigger commute. But you can see at the bottom there, San Francisco and
Seattle.
Down in Seattle at the bottom have always had a much smaller share of search that goes to the suburbs, right? These are places where, the job growth in the last year or last several years has been downtown, but you see a falling share to the suburbs still. So it doesn't seem to reflect the drama of urban flight that we've been kind of thinking about.
That's interesting because a lot of the reasons why people live in the city, it's proximity, it's energy, it's restaurant and culture. A lot of those things have been taken away.
Absolutely, and we're anxiously waiting for them to come back, I think. Remember, home services are done in the long run, right? But honestly, we looked at this for rental search as well, so people searching for rental, that is also a falling share of suburban search. So really trying to get get our minds around, why we're not seeing this. I should point out that when I'm saying suburban search, what do we define as suburban? I don't mean principal city versus everybody outside and less satellite cities, right? Those satellite cities, the Redwood City of, the metro, there is an urban area in Redwood City, right? That's not necessarily all the suburbs, right? So suburbs truly means, generally in this modeling, how we define things, it tends to mean the people there drive long distances to work. There's less amenities. They're much more likely bedroom communities, things like that.
Have you seen any changes in search with people looking to get bigger places? Has the work from home showed up in any of the wanderlust as people are searching around?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, we haven't yet, we're pulling those search numbers now. And so those would actually be That's an analysis that my peer Jeff Tucker is actively working on, right? To search kind of maybe the types of homes, maybe searches building, in places that have home office. We did do a survey because that can be a little bit, just to get a leading edge of what people were thinking or feeling. 2 surveys. One was done to individuals who are newly remote and whether or not they would consider moving and why, what would they be looking for. And it absolutely is, it's not really in favor of moving to the burbs, or moving further out. It was in favor of, I need a different house, I need a spare office. 2/3 of those survey respondents are not working from a dedicated home office, right? They're working in shared spaces and trying to make that work, and so I think it's about a different house. It's about a larger house. The builder survey did also emphasize, in terms of what are they planning, what different homes are they planning to build now in light of all of this. Of course, home office was there, those sorts of things. But it was also ensuite bathrooms and dual masters, right? With this idea that over time, more and more of us are housing adult children. And look what just happened, in terms of the share of adults living with parents or grandparents. 2.2 million Gen Z just moved back home, and they're going to have a hard time.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Job market.
Yeah. And is that an economic impact that we would expect to play out throughout throughout the pandemic?
Oh yeah. So one of the things we're noticing right now, I mean, look at the rent numbers. This is national, but most major metropolitan areas reflect this dynamic where normally, so these are month-over-month numbers in rent growth, and you can see it's seasonal, right? Because people go home for the summer, or
sure.
So we generally start to see at this time period, you would have expected this to look like this, but you saw a dramatic fall in rent. Rent fell in April nationally in many areas where younger adults take up a larger share of the population, or a larger share of the population is non-essential jobs, right? That had high impact to unemployment. You see even more significant falls in rent in April. Things got a little because people finally get the unemployment checks, right? But that has people moving and doubling up, moving back home. That has a huge impact on rental markets. And then if we take that out over the really long term, when rent markets get really soft, then we stop building new projects. And as much as you kind of feel like, this will ease the burden on renters, that rent is starting to fall. This is only falling because renters are struggling, not because there's suddenly more units available, or anything like that. And we still have a massive generation in need of housing, right? This is where
so it's really a question of income and resources that renters have, not a function that we're growing more. So in a region that has a serious housing shortage, this pressure on renters could affect what gets built in the future, could depress even further new construction and apartment buildings.
Absolutely. And you go from an environment where you already have, pretty high rent burdens. Once we start to recover, those rent burdens will keep these adult children in your homes. The for sale is actually boomers don't downsize as readily. They don't free up the inventory for the next move up buyer, for the Gen Xers who have teenagers, and want more space. They don't have the inventory from the boomers, downsizing and moving down, because everyone's housing adult children, so they hold on to their homes. And a lot of those major kind of milestones when you make a change market, you leave the rental market, are being pushed further and further out. It's one of the reasons why there's low inventory in lots of metropolitan areas. Really, in particular, in expensive ones, right? The higher that rent burden, the more common this strategy is.
Sure. And there's another force, which is another conversation. I'm sure we could do another webinar on Prop 13 in California. So there's a tax incentive for homeowners to stay in their homes. One of the questions that's come up often is, 2008 was a big crash in housing. Are we going to see the same thing through COVID? What are the differences?
Absolutely. This is nothing like then. And I think one of the kind of easiest ways to think about what's so unlike then and why we're not expecting a crash is because we characterize the housing bubble and bust and the global financial crisis of the aughts was excess predatory credit and lending that drove 4.5 million Americans to buy homes where they really couldn't sustain home ownership in times when times go bad, right? So when times did go bad, they re-entered the rental market in a traumatic way. You know, a foreclosure means not just did you lose all that wealth, but you also can't buy for another 7 years. And so you can't catch the swing up in home equity. That's what also drove prices down, and down, right? Is the foreclosure spike. So these days we don't have excess homeowners because we don't have excess credit. It's kind of funny. So these days, you know,
wow.
We had vanilla mortgages, you know, leading up to this crisis. You know, your 30-year fixed rate mortgage took up the bulk of it. Back before the housing bubble and bust, almost half of these mortgages were adjustable rate loans, were, you know, odd products. This was predatory credit lending. This was criminal.
All that blue section was predatory lending.
Mostly, yes.
Mostly.
I mean, irresponsible if you don't want to, you know, if we don't want to be, you know, too violent against it.
Sure.
Criminal.
Sure.
And this excess credit drove a building boom, right? So that leading up into the crisis last time, we had excess homeowners that returned to foreclosure, but those foreclosed homes joined a glut of inventory anyway from a building boom that was driven by excess credit, right? And so that caused things to come tumbling down. The imbalance was absolutely in housing itself. This is where we started this experience. It's nothing like it. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, with all the financial stresses, kind of a follow-up to what happened in 2008, what are your expectations on foreclosures after COVID?
Yeah, you know, so I do want to say that as much as I just gave a story for why housing markets are more resilient, and they absolutely are, you know, that support from the CARES Act is pretty crucial in terms of keeping those marginal buyers, you know, the ones that were, you know, low down payments, that had, you know, non-performing loans. You know, keeping those guys who are more likely to also, of course, you know, suffer unemployment, right? Because they tend to be lower income in service. That is that set of the population. They are absolutely supported by the unemployment benefits. You know, as much as so when they expire on July 31st, I do worry about foreclosures returning to the market. It is one of the risks that could foil our forecast that prices won't fall very much, right? If we see a lot of foreclosures in certain markets, that's going to change the story. So that government aid is still pretty crucial. But even without it, and I know this seems crazy, but even without it, because you know, access to home ownership was still so challenging leading up to this crisis, that those buyers are much more resilient, or recent buyers are more resilient, and I wouldn't expect as bad as a foreclosure crisis, but at the same time, this support is pretty important.
And if you do have more foreclosures, generally, does that put downward pressure on prices?
Oh, absolutely. That is the mechanism for sure that causes prices to start tumbling down. And the way to think about it is not only is it, you know, new supply in a very, you know, Econ 101 way, right? When supply shifts in, prices go up. When supply shifts out, prices go down. This is my duty these days, right, as an economist, to remind people of this.
This is wonderful.
Flashbacks. But not just this, the supply that then would return to the market would be very motivated, right? They need to get rid of the property to avoid, say, foreclosure and keep the equity. So if they were in a situation where they know they cannot pay their mortgage, they will put that home on the market for sale and they'll be motivated to sell. That can cause prices to soften significantly.
Yeah. You know, as you do your forecasts, I imagine that there's a range of things. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario to kind of wrap it up?
Right? the national forecast in front of us. We are just now kind of incorporating, and we'll be releasing our metro level forecast very soon. But the shape that's modeled here, we would expect to be, similar in most places. Probably more because it's hard to pull in the local nuance at this moment, when every place has a different response to COVID. Every place has a different, just so much is really driving the experience of different areas across the country. But this in general should be the shape of things. What this forecast shows is prices falling 1 to 2% from February to October, and then reaching those February highs, which is where the dotted lines are. It's not, the dotted lines aren't just 2019 levels. The dotted lines are the February glory days, leading into this crisis. But prices won't return until spring of 2021. Sales activity would take a little bit longer still, maybe not even until the winter of 2021. That's the most likely scenario. I do, want to point out that only 3 weeks ago maybe, when we showed this slide, the price fall expectations were worse, right? It was 2 to 3%. Full drop in sales activity was anywhere from 50 to 60%. Here, 40 to 50. Right, and also the probabilities on the pessimistic scenario fell. There's now more of a balance between optimism and pessimism as we watch jobs numbers return very quickly, as we watch sales volumes recover, more quickly than anticipated. Remember, San Jose is still more soft, right? Than not quite up to where it was. So San Jose is likely to possibly have more of an impact to prices than, say, San Francisco or the nation. But that said, we do expect this to not be as bad as before by any means, but the recovery could take some time. I notice it takes time, even if it's a V shape, right? Because of this kind of more check pattern. So it's a V in the beginning, but then it slows down.
Right. It's not that supercharged market that we're used to here in the Bay Area. Skylar,
it might be.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your expertise. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and you have graphs for everything and answers for most things, which is really a difficult thing to do in the real estate market.
It comforts me to put my hands on data, right? Like holding on. So I'm happy to provide that for others.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Skylar. Skylar Olson, a senior economist for Zillow. We really appreciate her being here. We have a couple of local agents with expertise on boots on the ground, and I'd like to introduce them right now. One agent that the first agent I'll introduce is Ramesh Rao. He is a Cupertino-based agent with Coldwell Banker. He has started his career in the high-tech industry and transferred very successfully into real estate, and has been a veteran selling in Silicon Valley for some time. Sandy Jamison is the president of the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. She is also a very successful agent who started her business, her career in high tech too, and switched over to properties, and found that buying and selling and investing was a much more rewarding and exciting place to be. So we welcome these two experts. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to throw out a question to you both. And Sandy, why don't you answer first, and then Ramesh, you can jump in. What are you hearing from your clients out here? What was happening early in the year, and what happened immediately after the pandemic?
Great question, Lou, and thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. So yeah, we were full steam ahead at the beginning of the year. It was going to be a banner year. We were looking to look. 2020 was going to be just phenomenal for sales volume, for prices, all around. It was going to be excellent. We had a lot of listings coming on. We had a lot of excited sellers. We had a lot of buyer momentum, and then COVID hit. And then everything came to a screeching halt. And so we hit this major hiccup. And so things are starting to come out of that. We've had a lot of velocity in the last 30 days. And what I mean by that is the buyer activity has really picked up. things were moving pretty slowly for the first couple of months, but literally in the last 30 days, the buyers are out, they're making offers, they're showing, the pendings have gone up significantly. But what we're seeing still on the seller side is a number of sellers, and I work a lot with sellers who are of retirement age. And so what I'm seeing is a significant number of clients who have small businesses. They've been shut down for so many months that they are basically at a point where they're just going to throw in the towel. They don't see any clear end in sight to this corona shelter in place and all these restrictions, and they haven't been able to go back to business. And if business does open up, they're not sure what the business is going to look like, if there's even going to be much of a business there. So many of them are just deciding to fold up shop. Let's either sell the business, liquidate the assets, and let's finally just retire. Let's put the house on the market. We don't even really need to be in the Bay Area anymore. Why don't we cash in? We have a lot of equity in our homes. Why don't we cash those homes in? Let's move out of state. We can find a nice community, and you know, for all practical purposes, they see it as they can find a better lifestyle at a much lower price in other parts of the nation. And so they can then put some money in the bank and they can use that for retirement. So we're seeing a lot of that right now. Yeah.
Ramesh, what are you hearing from buyers? Is there buyers and sellers? Is the demand out there, and what's happening with supply? In your and please talk about you're based in Cupertino. You do a lot of Silicon Valley.
Correct. Thanks for having me here, Lou. I really appreciate it. Basically, what's happening in our market is a little bit different. We have a lot of moving up buyers who have been waiting for a while to move up. They're talking about people who used to live in 3 bedrooms looking to buy 4 or 5 bedroom homes. People living typically in condominiums or townhomes, having small families, are now ready to move into a single family home to stretch a little bit more. So what we see is happening is 2 things. On the buyer side, we have a pool of very qualified and more ready to make an offer kind of buyers. That's simply because what happened is because of the virus, we changed the process completely got changed from how it used to be to 180 degrees. Let me explain what I mean by that. Generally, people used to find a home from looking at websites like Redfin or Zillow or some other place. They would look at that and say, oh, you know what, let's go and check it out on an open house. They look at the open house, they like the properties, then they say, well, what do the disclosures say? What do the reports say? Let me take a look at that. If they liked all of them, then they would say, well, okay, we want to make an offer. What's the right price to pay? But thanks to the coronavirus, it's completely 180 now. People first get all the information they want about the house. They are given the virtual tours and, you know, basically virtual open houses. And they look at all those things, look at the property, and they make sure that they really like the property before taking the final point or the step in the decision making, which is actually go and visit the home. Because of that, what has happened is the number of buyers that we would see for a listing has gone down dramatically. At the same time, the quality of the buyers has gone up because each one of them is likely to make an offer because they have looked at every other aspect of the house.
So you're finding that buyers are really doing their homework these days. And if they're going to take a measured risk with their health, they're going to be pretty sure that it's a house that they might want to buy. There's not a lot of looky-loos going on in these listings.
That is correct. All the looky-loos are happening online because if you look at the number of views these listings are getting online, they are going into thousands now. But then, you know, actually how many people want to make an appointment to see the property? The numbers fall dramatically. Then how many offers we get out of them is even smaller.
And Sandy, what are you seeing? Is that a similar experience that you get? And what's happening to the prices when you have fewer buyers?
So the online traffic right now is huge because the buyers are spending more time at home. They're able to search online. They're looking at a lot more houses. So we're seeing a lot of traffic on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, all these sites.
Mhm.
But as Ramesh said, that doesn't always translate into number of showings. So what I'm seeing is I'm getting 20 to 30 showings on a listing before I receive that first offer. It takes quite a few more showings because the buyers are far more discerning than they ever were before. They want a house that's move-in ready. So I tell my sellers, look, if your house has deferred maintenance or functional obsolescence or isn't priced right, then you're going to be on the market for quite a while. Because these buyers, they don't want to move into a fixer-upper. They don't want to have to pour a lot of money into it after they move in. They want a house that is well-maintained, that has already been updated, is nice by and large, and that they want that so that they can move in and enjoy the home immediately. And so the homes that are priced right and show the best are obviously going to sell the fastest. But we have definitely seen that it's taking more showings in order to get to a decent offer.
Mhm. What do you hear from sellers, Sandy? What concerns do they have about health and safety? And I want both of you to talk a little bit about how you've changed your business since the middle of March.
That's a great question, Lou. So yeah, the sellers are definitely concerned about COVID and how we can protect their health through this process. We do have a number of guidelines in the real estate industry that we're following. For example, open houses are no longer allowed. So all showings have to be by appointment. The seller is supposed to leave the home during the showing, and only the agent and 2 buyers maximum are allowed into the home. So they're not supposed to come through with 5 or 6 family members. It's only supposed to be 2 buyers with an agent. All parties are supposed to wear a mask and gloves as they come through the home, and the property is supposed to be sanitized and wiped down by the agent on their way out, or the listing agent or seller. Somebody needs to wipe everything down in between showings in order to make sure that it's sanitary. We're seeing that we're taking wipes and we're using those on the doorknobs and wiping down all the lock boxes and doorknobs. Anything we have to touch, we wipe those down as we go. And then we recommend to the sellers who are showing their properties, leave all the closet doors open with the lights on. That way there's less touching. The buyer's agent doesn't have to open that door and turn on that light. It's already there. They could just take a peek. They don't actually have to touch anything. So it helps minimize that. So there's measures that we're taking in order to try to protect our sellers as best as possible. And so that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Ramesh, are you taking similar precautions? And can you talk a little bit about more virtual 3D tours and videos? Has that become more of your marketing and your presentation of homes?
Yeah, definitely. Just like Sandy was saying, we have very strict guidelines as to what precautions we should take to make sure we don't spread the coronavirus. Coldwell Banker has extensive guidelines as to what we have to do to educate the buyers and the sellers before we actually let them into the home. And we provide them the gloves and the mask if they don't have any, and hand sanitizers. And kids are obviously not allowed into the house. So we take as many precautions as possible, including the social distancing requirements, to make sure the health risk is avoided at any cost. Having said that, when we have to show the property to the client, people don't make decisions of buying a $3 million home sight unseen. They really want to go in there sooner or later. So the next best alternative we can offer is the virtual tour that many of these vendors are offering these days. But what we do have to do one time was, I had this listing in Sunnyvale. That was the peak of the coronavirus when nobody could be allowed inside, including the listing agent. So the seller went around with FaceTime Live. We scheduled the FaceTime Live, and then people called in, and the seller went into each room, and as if the buyer is walking through the home. And we stopped at every point saying, do you have any questions? Do you want to see something else? Show me from this angle, show me from that angle, or do you have this new drapes? Whatever the buyers wanted to do, we could do that. And we even sold that home to a buyer who just saw the home virtually. So it is sometimes doable, but not very often.
It's so you just with an iPhone and a good pair of shoes, you can show virtually these days.
Well,
New way of doing business, and you know, realtors, in my experience with them, you're very friendly people. You like the handshakes and the hugs and the personal connections. Have you found that difficult or challenging in these days, Sandy?
Absolutely. I've always been a big hugger, and so it's a little awkward sometimes, even on an appointment. Like last night, as I'm leaving my client's home, my inclination is to want to reach out my hand and shake their hand or give them a hug, and I can't, so I just kind of stand back and wave and chuckle, but it creates a little bit of an awkwardness. And so I honestly, I can't wait to get back to the days where we can actually act like normal again.
Yeah, yeah. Ramesh, how do you do the virtual handshakes?
you know, it's very hard. Just yesterday, we sold a multi-million-dollar home. And when I went to give the key to my client, it was so hard not to just shake hands saying, thanks for everything. But then, you know, it's kind of nice in a way that people recognize that you cannot do certain things in this environment. And they express that a lot in work. You know, we use a lot of text, a lot of emails to say what we want, how they feel. So my time on the phone has gone up dramatically since the coronavirus days, because that's the only form of conversation we have these days.
Yeah, yeah. Ramesh, when you work with a lot of tech clients, a lot of tech professionals, have you seen a change in their desires for a type of home? Are they looking for more space these days, since the major tech employers are saying that work from home is going to be a bigger part of work life in the future? Do you see that already, or do you expect it in the future?
It's funny you should ask that, because when work from home happened, it was purely by necessity. So there was no other alternatives the employers had rather than shut the place down. So when working from home happened, I heard a lot from my clients saying, you know what, I'm going to be working remotely, so I can go anywhere. I'm not attached to the physical location of the office. And a month into it, their perspective has completely changed. Now they're saying, I want a demarcation between my work and home. I don't want to be home all the time. I want to be somewhere undisturbed by my family. So people who used to have smaller homes are beginning to ask me for a bigger home. Just yesterday, I had a call from a client who lives in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in San Jose. Beautiful and recently updated. They bought it only 5 years ago. They want a home in Los Altos Hills. They say, we want an acre lot. We don't want anything less than that. So get me something there. And I said, what about commute? Yeah, we are going to be very close to the commute. So commute is still the #1 reason why people want to live closer to rather than move away from there.
So it's still important to a lot of tech professionals to be near the office, to be near the mothership.
Yes, because they don't believe that it's going to be 100% working remotely. There will be scenarios where they have to go to the physical location of the office, either for making presentations or meetings, because the people I'm dealing with are very much in the mid-level to a high-level executives. They cannot work from home forever when the offices open up. There is, you know, so I see more and more people still buying homes closer to workplace and not other way around.
Yeah. Sandy, we've got a question here from one of the audience, and you might be able to shed some insight into this. Have you seen any changes? I don't know how much commercial business you do. Have you seen any or heard any in the changes in the commercial market, and might some of that be open to becoming affordable housing or some way repurposed?
So that's a great question. We have seen some changes in the commercial space with a lot of the small businesses, definitely in small retail strip centers or small office complexes. There's a lot of businesses that are just going to be working at home permanently, or they're folding up their business. So we're expecting to see a very much slow, more depressed market in the commercial leasing space. I think there's going to be a lot more inventory. We're expecting more inventory out there, maybe a little bit of softening in the prices, and it's certainly going to take longer to find a tenant to fill that space. Now, I have not heard anything about repurposing those spaces and turning them into residential units. That touches on a lot of factors about zoning and permitting, and that's definitely a bigger can of worms. Yeah. So, but we're certainly expecting that there's going to be some depression in the commercial space.
Yeah. Sandy, you focus a lot on relocations and older homeowners looking to move out of the Bay Area. I thought one of the fascinating stories was about one of your clients, Tony Hicks, and he owned 3 properties in San Jose, and he had tenants in all of them and lived in one of them. Please tell us about Tony and what drove him, and how did his escape from the Bay Area turn out?
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, Tony Hicks approached me, and he had 3 properties in San Jose. They were all rentals, and he was basically renting rooms out, and so he had 3 to 4 tenants in each house. But Tony's the type of person that everyone he rents is like a family member to him. He's such a wonderful, lighthearted, wonderful, I just can't even say enough good things about him. So that when he decided that he wanted to leave California, he approached all of his tenants and asked them if they would be willing to go with him. And 90% of them said yes. And so he actually bought 5 houses in Colorado, which were nicer homes, all fixed up, lovely, and moved them and paid their moving expenses, got the moving trucks, moved them all to Colorado, lowered their rents at the same time. And so he literally picked up and moved his entire estate to Colorado. I helped him sell these 3 houses in San Jose. They're all out there. They love it. They're happy. They're still together. All the roommates are getting along. They have a nicer home. Right. They love the community. And he built his own house, a big house. He started from scratch, and he recently moved in, huge 4,000 square foot home, gorgeous. And so he is on top of the world right now. He couldn't be happier. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And that just sort of shows you what you can do with the equity in your Bay Area home if you're a long time homeowner here. And Tony, as I recall, his new house has a 5-car garage, yet he only has 2. So I don't know what he's going to do with all that space, but he is a very spirit-filled and fun guy. We have a couple of other questions here. Have you seen any buyers that are interested in having multi-generational homes? Is there a push to bring families together right now? High prices here and tight-knit families. Ramesh, do you see any of that?
Not particularly from people who are considering bringing their parents in. Many of my clients already have taken that into account when they buy a home. They may have family or friends coming to stay with them for an extended period of time. So they always make sure that they have a guest bedroom per se that caters to that particular need. But I'm not seeing that as a result of the COVID-19 activity.
Yeah. Sandy, do you see any of that in your buyers?
Not a big shift in that direction. We're still seeing a large demand for homes that have a bedroom and full bathroom on the ground floor for the families that have their parents come in and stay with them for several months out of the year. Those homes are still in high demand, but that hasn't changed as a result of COVID. That's been constant for several years.
Have you seen any changes in the market for second homes? I know it's still early and all the trends haven't played out, but has anything changed in that space?
So, Lou, I think that's a great question. I don't have the actual data on this, but I've read some articles and I've also got a little bit of experience. I personally have a second home in Tahoe, and I know that many people who do are spending more time at their second home working from home. Since they don't have to go into the office, there's no reason that they have to stay in San Jose or the Bay Area to work from home. So they're spending more time in their second homes. And I do know that some markets, Florida and definitely Jackson, and some of the second home markets are seeing a boom right now because a lot of these wealthy people who have money are trying to cash in and take advantage in those markets because they can pick up some properties that maybe somebody else is selling because they're out of work and they're stressed, and so they need to offload the property for financial reasons. There's plenty of other people willing to jump in and pick up those homes at a bargain. And so what that means is there's more trading going on. I'm not sure how that equates into prices, but we're seeing some more activity in some of those markets. And Skylar may actually have some data on this, but I've definitely been hearing about this. And even myself, I'm picking up another second home down in Mexico, an oceanfront property. I just
that would
like
be a third home then, Sandy, if it's another second. So just a point of clarification that journalists use.
Picking up my third home, yes, of course.
Okay. So some activity there anecdotally, and it's like we said, it's a little bit early for it to show up in the numbers. Hey, Ramesh, have you heard anything, and I'll throw it out to both of you. Got a question about ADUs. Are people interested in looking for accessory dwelling units, cottages, granny flats, more so right now than perhaps in the pre-COVID era?
We do expect what we see more and more happening is, as a general term, not after the COVID-19, we have seen an increased request for ADUs or off-air quarters. We have seen that, or we see places where they say either need an ADU or at least room to put one. On the lower end, we don't see that much because generally the lot sizes tend to be smaller and they cannot accommodate putting up an ADU. On the higher end, like Los Altos Hills or Saratoga, we already see many homes do come with ADUs. Very nicely done ADUs. I don't mind living in one of them. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
They're also being used more as a source of revenue in many cases as well, because you can easily get $2,500 to $3,000 rent for a 2-bedroom, nicely done ADU in Los Altos.
Sure. Yeah. Sandy, have you seen any questions about that?
Absolutely. It's one of probably the most common questions we get on certain listings is, can I put an ADU on this property? And anytime I have a home with a slightly larger lot, that is one of the key questions is, can I put an ADU on it? So we are definitely seeing a lot of interest there.
Another question, have you seen a decline in listings of rental properties? And I think this might be, hopefully we're still going here. A decline in rental properties listings because of the eviction moratorium. This sounds like it's from a landlord, property manager.
So I haven't seen the data on this, but with the eviction moratorium in effect, that means that it's going to take longer to vacate a tenant, which means that property will not be coming available back up for rent for quite some time. So those tenants are going to stay put as long as they possibly can under these current restrictions. So that would lead me to believe that there is likely probably some reduction in the availability of rental units out there. I can also tell you, though, that many investors right now are hesitant to buy more properties to hold as long-term rentals in the Bay Area or even in California for that matter, because of all these rental restrictions and eviction moratoriums, they're extremely hesitant to pick up more of those into their portfolio. And so that is definitely a trend that I'm seeing. And then in addition to that, another thing that I'm seeing is landlords who do have a property for rent are scrutinizing a little bit more heavily what is the applicant's occupation. Do they have an essential job or not? And so you can see that there may be some occupation discrimination perhaps going on out there that didn't used to matter or wasn't a big focus, but we're seeing more people thinking of that mindset these days. And so I can tell you that those are the things that I'm seeing.
Yeah. One last to wrap it up, and I'll throw it out to Ramesh. What does the future look like, do you think, in the 12 months or so, or however long we have for this pandemic? What are you expecting?
There's a lot of uncertainties in the market right now. The biggest one is when the vaccine for this virus is going to be available. That there's a lot of things hinging upon what's going to happen. When can the economy open? Really, when can people go back to work? When can kids go back to school? So given all those uncertainties, what we see happening is people are still assuming that they'll be able to go back to school and work and everything eventually, maybe in 2021 rather than in 2020. So what we see happening is people moving up and making room for that scenario when they may have to spend some more time in the home. So we do expect more homes to come on the market, and we also see if that's priced right, value-based pricing, what I call, if your location perfect, good schools, and good condition, homes are going very quickly, and we believe that trend will continue for a long time, as long as the local economy and the local stock market is doing well.
Great. Sandy, what do you expect for the future?
So we're expecting a healthy market, a lot of activity, trading in real estate in the Bay Area throughout the rest of the year and into next year. Barring that we don't have another phase 2 coronavirus lockdown, if that hits in the fall or winter, as some people are predicting, then that will certainly cause another hiccup. But aside from that, the factors still remain strong. One of the questions I used to have is, what would the foreclosure market look like next year? Are we going to expect a wave there or not? And I know that Skylar had touched on this a little bit. A couple of thoughts on that. So I can tell you right now that the broker price opinion requests from the banks is up significantly, and that is driven by the number of defaults. So the notice of defaults are up, as would be expected. We're in it's about 3 months, which is hitting that 90-day mark now, where people haven't made their payments. So we're starting to see that pick up. However, we don't expect all of those to translate into foreclosures next year, because what's different this time around is that people have equity. The market values are up. The market has still remained stable by and large. And so if they're not able to catch up on their payments, they're going to be more likely to be able to sell that home and capture some of their equity in order to avoid losing it to foreclosure. So we might see a few, but it's not going to be anything like what it was back in 08 and 09. I did just get one this week, a foreclosure assignment. So there's going to be a few out there, like I said, but it's not going to be huge. I think people will find a way to save themselves. And by and large, the majority of the market is going to be pretty healthy, as long as we can manage to keep people working and keep the economy moving forward. I think everything's going to be just fine in the Bay Area.
That's great. Well, I want to thank our guests. Great information, great conversation. I really appreciate it. Skylar Olson, a senior economist with Zillow, and Sandy Jameson with Toscana Properties, and Ramesh Rao with Coldwell Banker. Experts all. Thank you so much. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, readers. Support local news. And as always, I'm Louis Hansen. Please subscribe and reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks. I'll turn it back to Aaron.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had here. Thank you to all our guests. And again, thank you subscribers, thank you readers for joining. You will have another event, right, on July 16th. So please go ahead and sign up and register for that if you are interested. If you do have any questions, please let us know at theevents@bayareanewsgroup.com. We did record this, so we'll be sending out a recording of it. And I did confirm that we will get some of the slides from Skylar's presentation, so that will be sent out as well. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful Thursday. We'll see you guys later. Bye.